Good morning. In John 5 today, we're going to encounter one of the miracles of Christ. Now I want you to remember, we saw early on in the book of John that these miracles have been recorded for a reason. As a matter of fact, John, he wrote John, he also wrote 1 John. He's always pretty clear on telling you why he's doing what he's doing, why he's writing what he's writing. And concerning the miracles of Christ, it says in John 20 verse 30, it says, "Now many other signs Jesus did in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in His name." That God has allowed these miracles to be recorded that Christ accomplished so that you and I would trust Him for our salvation. Now listen, if these miracles lead us to any other conclusion, then we are going to the wrong conclusion. In this particular miracle, which was written that we might believe, it says in John 5:5 that there was one who had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he had already been there a long time, and he said, "Do you want to be healed?" First thing I want you to see today is this. This man had been an invalid for 38 years. Christ had never met him. Christ had never encountered him. But Christ did create him. He knew he had been there a long time. God knows your situation. There is nothing that is invisible from the eyes of God. Christ knew this man was there before he ever got there. He had been there for 38 years. And then Jesus asked him this question. He said, "Do you want to be healed?" Well, the man did. The sick man said, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool. And when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going down the steps, another one steps in before me." You know, there was a certain process that this man had been taught, that if there's any chance of me getting healed, I've first got to get into that pool. But he did not even have the means to get into that pool. He was an invalid. He couldn't get in. It sounds a lot like us before salvation, doesn't it? That we may want to be saved, but there's nothing we can do to earn our salvation. There's nothing we can do to gain our salvation. There's no hoop that we can jump through because we are dead in our trespasses and sins. And this man says to Jesus, "I can't get into the pool, so I can't be healed." And Jesus said to him, "Get up and walk." Is that not amazing when you see the power of God? God says to this man, who nobody's been able to heal for 38 years, "Get up and walk." And at once, the man was healed, and he took up his bed, and he began to walk. Now, this isn't the greatest miracle in this passage, because if you go down a little bit further, around verse 14, Christ encounters this man again, and he says, "Go and sin no more." In other words, the real miracle in this passage is not the invalid was walking around town after being grounded for 38 years, but it's that God in His grace and mercy sent Christ not only to give him legs that he may walk the city, but He gave him a new heart and put a new spirit within him, drew him to Himself, opened his eyes to his sin, and saved him by His grace. That's the miracle in this passage. Remember, this miracle was written that you may believe that God sent Christ to raise you from the dead.